Hey Westsiders and anyone else who is listening in. This past week in our area in Pembina Valley, it was Mental Health Awareness Week. And today is Bell Let's Talk, which is a movement where we try and take the stigma away from our mental health, our struggles with being able to talk about it. And we're also in a series called Insanity, where we're going through Ephesians and just talking about our world can be really difficult. It can feel like it's insane out there, and how are we called to walk with people, but also walk in honesty and authenticity with all relationships in our life and all people. So to that end, we thought we'd have a conversation with Christine Elias. She works at Pembina Counselling Center and is a counselor there. And so it's always good to talk to people who are wiser than we are, and we're excited to have you here. Thank you very much for saying yes to this. So a few questions we have, we'd love to have your insight on. And the first one is, what are some of the stigmas that society displays or we display when it comes to mental health?
Right off the hop, where I go in my thinking is that idea where you need to be going through something extremely serious, or you need to have perhaps a diagnosis to even walk into a counselor's office. And I think that's a huge stigma. I think most people would be surprised who I'm sitting with every day, and that's, people like you, like me, like everyone who's listening. Not all of the people coming have diagnosis or even severe mental health issues, but sometimes we're just navigating life, right? We've got a difficult relationship. We've got questions how to parent a teenager, right? Dealing with things from our past and wondering how that affects us in how we're living today. So I think that's probably one of the hugest stigmas, is that we have to be at the edge. We have to be in serious mental health shape to even go to the office. That's not true.
That's really good. Just to talk to someone, talk it through what we're dealing with, to have that objectivity and care.
Yes.
We are in a church, and I think we've all heard at times where faith can actually complicate, perhaps, or be a complication when it comes to mental health. How have you found that to be true, or maybe not true? How does faith complicate our perceptions of mental health?
Okay. I think both things. I think for some people, faith is a definite strength, right? It's a place to turn. If they know that they have God in their life and that He is with them always, that's a huge comfort and strength. But I think where it gets complicated is when we're clinging to some things that aren't truth. And that would be the idea of, I must not have a very strong faith. I must not really trust God, or I wouldn't be feeling anxious, or I wouldn't be depressed. So some people still believe that if you're a godly person, you don't struggle with these things. And I would compare it to physical health things, right? Someone with cancer, we don't usually question whether they have a strong faith or if they're praying enough. And it's the same with depression or anxiety or any other health issue, mental health issue. It's not about how strong or weak your faith is, right?
Right.
I think we forget that God told us on this earth we will have troubles, and some of the things we deal with relationally or with our mental health are actually some of those things, right? They just will happen.
So we're almost a year, or we are a year into this pandemic, this long season of isolation, of being cut off from community, of restrictions, all those fun words. What's been your experience? What are you seeing in our cities, in our homes during this time?
Initially, if you would have asked me that in the beginning of the pandemic, even when we were in shutdown, I would have said I don't actually see a huge difference. What I saw was, yes, maybe we'd small talk with a client about what's going on in the world, but it was the issue that they came for was still the issue, right?
Right.
Now I would say that's changed. The longer this pandemic has gone on, the more we have been in isolation and have lived restricted, is exacerbating things that were already going on. So that real feeling like I've become more of a worrier, someone will say, right? I'm doing things that I wouldn't have done before. I'm questioning myself more than I would have before. And you know what I think it is? I think, like we know, and science has figured out, it's like we need each other. God created us that way, right? What is one of the benefits of connecting with people is exactly what you said before, that outside perspective. If we are isolated, we live up here, right? All of those thoughts that we have, logical or irrational, we're not bouncing them off anyone. We're not having coffee and saying, hey, I'm feeling this way, this is what I've been thinking. When we can do that, someone else can speak logic or rationality into that situation, and
Right.
it kind of softens it. It makes us realize that just because we think it doesn't mean it's true.
We're definitely to be connected, and the disconnect and the cumulative effect,
Yes.
right, of day after day after day absolutely plays into it, and that's what we've experienced as well. What advice would you give someone who is really just walking through life? You talked about earlier how it's not just when you're at the edge of a cliff looking over and go, boy, I take one more step and I think I'm in some trouble, or we're already taking a step over that
Yeah.
cliff and we just feel like we're just so lost. What advice would you have for someone who is wondering what resources are out there, or what to do?
Okay. I think it is a good start to talk to someone in your everyday life, right? And even for that idea of they can speak into that. Maybe they would say to you, maybe what they say to you is helpful. Even that connection is helpful, and you don't feel like your problem is as big. But when you do notice that you've kind of been stuck in this place and things actually are getting worse, you're feeling worse, that's a good indicator probably that you need to talk to perhaps a professional. And I would liken it like we've been talking about, right? We all will have these struggles. It doesn't have to be something large, huge, a diagnosis. But maybe we could think of counseling like brushing our teeth, right? That idea of dental hygiene. Why do we do it? Because we don't want the cavity, right? So if we think of counseling almost like emotional hygiene, we're doing something proactive. We're working on our mental health so that it doesn't become something bigger for us. We have become really good, a lot of us, at working on physical health habits, right? A lot of us like to eat healthy. It's a priority. We exercise. But why do we not pay attention to our mental health, right? Our mind, our brain, it's like the computer. It's the driver for all the rest of us. So if this is healthy, chances are good the rest of us is healthy.
There's just something, like for myself personally, and I know in others, that to carry off the perception or the illusion that we have our act together, that it's all okay, we're strong enough, what I'm going through didn't wreck that person, or it did, but it will not happen to me. Just to be honest and open with it. I know whenever if we're preaching about it, if we're just sharing about our own journey, our own struggles, that it is always met with people's appreciation of the honesty, and also the opportunity then for them to share their story as well, the more we're open. So the Bell Let's Talk idea, the Pembina Valley Mental Health Awareness Week are really important. Last question I have for you is, what advice would you give someone who is, or anyone, as we are walking with people who are really just working through the stresses of life, or maybe having a hard time working through them and living with them, to support, to encourage, what advice would you have for us as we walk with each other, really?
I think probably most importantly in that is asking questions. I think if you know that someone is perhaps struggling with something in their life and they come to you with that, it's not usually helpful to try and solve the problem. I don't think most of us are looking for that. What we are looking for is to be seen and heard. So I think asking questions is a great way, and of course, that's what we do as counselors, right? We ask a lot of questions. And part of asking questions is building relationship, building trust, but also understanding, actually trying to understand what that person's going through. so that they feel seen and heard, and not just like, here's your Band-Aid, right? Here's what's going to fix that. But and also helping them come to that place where they realize maybe what they need even on their own.
And that's an amazing truth, right? To be good listeners, to be, and really just taking that interest in people's stories,
Right.
like actually wanting to know
Yes.
the essence of the other person. So, I could go soapboxing right now.
Some people are afraid to ask, or afraid to tell their story, or they feel like they're being a burden to others. That's probably another place where faith gets in the way. It's that idea of what a good Christian has it together and doesn't ask for help, because that's not truth either. But we've come to believe that, where if I'm a good Christian, I've got it all together and I don't ask for help, I'm the helper. But the truth is, we need to be vulnerable with one another. And you know who comes to my office? Not people who are weak. It's the courageous people. It shows strength to ask for help. That's the message I like to give out.
It's a great message. Thank you. Thanks so much for your time. There's a reason we asked you to be here. We've really been blessed by you. Thank you very much. So, mental health awareness, it's not just a week. It's a way to live, be aware for ourselves personally and for others, and especially as the body of Christ, as the church. May we be the best place to be who we are, created to be. Thank you very much, Christine. Really appreciate you. And have a great day.
Thank you.